Good evening. Welcome to the advanced workshop here at Atlanta Soto Zen Center. It's July 31st, 2025. This is that rare fifth Thursday. From my analysis, fifth days of the month come around 4 times a year, but we started doing the math and it seems that not all 7 days can come around 4 times a year. That'd be too many days. I noticed that typically we have 4 fifth Sundays a year. I'm just going to go back and look at the calendar again and see how it cycles. But fifth days of the month, good evening, Cyrus, are have to be accounted for because they do pop up from time to time. Does anybody happen to know, anybody studied the Julian calendar to that degree that you know? As a designer, I have produced and designed several versions of calendars, and you begin to understand what a kind of an arbitrary anomaly kind of thing it is to structure the calendar that way. First of all, we would have to say there's probably no such thing as a 24-hour day. Probably it's somewhere above and below 24 hours, right, as time goes on. And likewise, it's not likely that there's a 365-day orbit around the sun. It's probably a little under, a little over. Good evening.
1/4.
Pardon me?
365 and 1/4.
A little bit over.
That's what they always say.
There's an anomaly. We're getting distracted here. It's about time. There's an anomaly there that they found in putting people underground in California where you're not exposed to daylight. Your circadian clock, the body shifts. And they say consistently shifts to 25-hour cycle. So it makes you wonder if when we were evolving, was the Earth, was it a 25-hour day?
Brian was telling me about that when I was talking to him about my darkness retreats.
How about
the darkness retreats I've done? And you start to notice that within like 2 days of spending, it takes very little time but you mentioned that 25-hour clock.
Yeah. There's something weird about that, but so if you're a little disoriented, it's built in, don't worry about it. So today, the schedule, back to the overall schedule, natural posture, the first week of the month, the natural breath, mindful attention, the third, walking and chanting, the fourth, and the fifth, healing and sleeping, promoting well-being. So we go from finding your center in Zazen, following the body and the breathing and so forth, mindful attention, nurturing beginner's mind, and walking and chanting, feeling mokurai, stillness in motion. Promoting well-being is a little bit of an extension beyond the Zendo, you might say. And we will be returning to Hakuin's Naikan Tanden exercise today. And I will walk you through the soul cream exercise. And in general, discussion about what we mean by healing. Pass this around if you want to take a glance at it again. Notice all the various things going on in the body while we are sitting. All the things that we're subliminally unaware of. So we start from 7 to 7:30, going through the method of Zen. Then 7:30 to 8, we do a sitting with a teisho, a brief talk during the sitting, and a Q&A at the end, and we serve tea. And I'll also reintroduce you to the Naikan Tanden exercise, which is meant for you to do when you're going to sleep at night. So when you go home tonight, you may find it useful to try to employ this Naikan Tanden. This time I printed it out so everybody has a copy. That's the daily schedule. So I'll pass this around to you now. And there are 10 copies, so take one, pass it on. But I wanted in this first half hour to share something with you. And then I've got a diagrammatic version of that, which I will pass out when we get into it. It helps you kind of breaks it out so it helps you memorize. Ideally, you would memorize this, and as you go to sleep at night, you would go through these visualizations and intonations, sub-vocalizing or whatever. And you don't want to disturb your wife if you're chanting to yourself while you're going to sleep, I guess. And I think I told you about my experience of doing this. I'll go over that again if you're interested. But some years ago, 21, I had a Britt Yeager call, and she's publishing some kind of publication, and somehow heard about me and was interested in body scan meditation. So she sent a questionnaire for me to answer, and they were publishing this, or we were doing an interview. What is body scan meditation? And the SoCream method, which was also Hakuin recorded in one of Trevor Leggett's Zen Reader #1, Zen Reader #2. That's also where I found where I was first exposed to the Nikon Tanden. I'll read briefly a description of the SoCream method that was published in that book, and then we can walk through that exercise as well. The SoCream method is done while you're sitting upright in Zazen. Nikon Tanden is done while you're lying down, going to sleep. So she's publishing an article, asks the question, what is body scan meditation? How long have I practiced meditation? How often should somebody do body scan meditation technique, and why? There's like 10 questions. So just briefly, what is body scan meditation? Zen meditation is training our attention to focus more intensely on our senses, our habits of thinking, our behavior, and its effect upon others. Scanning the body is a natural part of this focus, especially on those areas that resist, joints and connective tissue that are stretched in tension, sitting in an upright posture. Special body scan approaches directed toward healing and imbalance in our health are also recommended in Zen, such as Hakuin Zenji's Nikon Tanden method of directing the breath while lying supine in order to get a good night's sleep, and his SoCream visualizations for scanning the body head to toe while seated in meditation, Zazen. These latter two are available in Trevor Leggett's Zen Reader, either one or two, #1 or #2. And how long have I practiced, and how often should somebody do the scan? Lay people's pattern of meditation averages something like 1 or 2 sessions a day, a group session once a week or a couple per month, pre and post pandemic, a day retreat maybe once a month, and multi-day retreat once or twice a year. For monastics and those living in residential communities, the pattern is typically more frequent, depending on the particular branch or sect. In Zen, we, quote, scan the body each time we sit in meditation, going over our checkpoints of the posture, arching the small of the back, pulling back on the chin, etc. We also recommend the relaxation response, squeezing and relaxing each part of set of muscles to reach equipoise or balanced effort. We start by rocking side to side, front to back, or around in a circle to settle into the posture and find center. So question #4, how can a body scan meditation practice give you better mind-body connection? What does that look like? The scanning approach heightens awareness of proprioception, the position of the body in space, to which we are not ordinarily very sensitive. By becoming hyper-aware of every detail of our posture, it comes into complete balance with gravity and eventually becomes effortless physically. This is called physical samadhi. Eventually, emotional and mental samadhi follow, as the mind, emotions, and body cannot be separated in Zen. We focus our breath on a point called the Tanden, indicated in the pit of the pelvis, located in the pit of the pelvis, the body's center of gravity, when sitting in Zazen, or when doing walking meditation, Japanese kinhin. This is the point that a long-distance runner keeps level so that there's no wasted up and down motion, the point around which a ballerina pivots, and the point from which a martial artist directs the life force, qi, or in Chinese, qi. We also recommend finding a simple way of counting the breath in order to make it easier to focus our attention on the breath. When resistance arises in the legs, hip, or back, we make adjustments to the posture, of course. It should be comfortable. But we also breathe into that area of resistance to relax it. Most discomfort and pain are resistance. In kinhin, we take a half step with each full cycle of breath, so it is very slow. We put our hands together against the chest, elbows raised for balance. We naturally scan the body from the soles, balls, and toes of the feet up through the ankles, calves, thighs, hips, and spine to the shoulders and neck, as if we are a marionette hanging from a string. Like a tightrope walker, kinhin is an exercise in physical balance, which is constantly shifting with the walking. Thus, the scanning is continual. Fifth question, why does meditation let us sleep better? On a physical level, it helps to relieve tension throughout the body while clearing up emotions and any mental confusion. We recommend that our students include the process of sleeping and dreaming in their practice. The hypnagogic and hypnopompic states, half awake and half asleep, that set in as we are drifting off to sleep and again as we are waking up, also occur in deep meditation. In these periods, the mind is very uninhibited and creative. 6, can body scan meditation reduce pain and inflammation? If so, how? Not sure, but tests at Komazawa University in Japan showed increases in blood circulation during upright seated meditation, Zazen, which obviously would lead to decreased inflammation. Pain is another question depending on the conditions that are causing the pain. A pinched nerve may not respond, while simple muscular cramping probably will. Can you use body scan meditation to improve proprioception? How? As mentioned above, simply paying close attention to our posture, whether standing, walking, sitting, or lying down, will improve our awareness of proprioception, which cannot itself be improved. It's simply what it is. The therapeutic effect of meditation, however, should improve over time. Can you take classes that perform body scan meditation, or is this something you do yourself? 8th question. Guided meditation is comprised of an extended monologue led by an experienced teacher. In Zen, we usually limit the introduction to basic instructions in order that the practitioners have the maximum amount of time for sitting silently. This we feel is most effective. Your body knows the meditation posture, which is the natural posture our ancestors would sit in around the campfire or when hunting. Your body also knows the natural breath, to which it will return if we follow the breath rather than trying to control it. We recommend going through the scanning process each time you sit in meditation, as it is necessary to find the natural process and the posture and breath, which will eventually lead to your recovering the original or natural state of mind. Is there a unique script for body scan meditation? What are the steps to do this at home? Posture. In upright seated meditation, we start with the posture, then turn our attention to the breath, and finally, the attention or thought process itself. Sitting in a stable and balanced, comfortable position improves each time we sit. We prefer sitting to lying down, as the spine, neck, and head, along with the spinal cord and brain, come into direct vertical alignment with gravity. The pendulum swing of the rocking motion we engage when we first sit down, and during sitting if we run into resistance or get off balance, helps awareness or proprioception, and enables us to find the sweet spot of the posture directly in the center, where the physical effort balances out around the spine, like the sails of a ship hanging from the mast. Breath Turning to the breath, we exhale completely, then let the in-breath fill the lungs fully, allowing the cycle to slow down of its own accord. We typically palpitate, breathing rapidly in the upper part of the lungs. But in meditation, the inhalation penetrates to the bottom of the lung and seems to touch bottom in the pit of the stomach, like a baby learning to sit up and breathe deeply. But we do not portion the breath or force it, we follow it. Counting the breath in some simple way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 for each cycle, for example, helps to focus the attention on the breath. Following the breath cycle in and out is also suggested. Attention, the attention or mind we direct to the posture and to the breath, which anchors it in the present moment. Naturally, the imagination or monkey mind will wander off on tangents. We follow it as it may be leading somewhere we want or need to go. But when we find it is just daydreaming, worrying, or ruminating over the past, we gently bring our attention back to the posture, breath, and the senses. Like working a muscle, this becomes stronger and easier over time. Eventually, we find ourselves sitting with a natural state of alertness. And if thoughts come, we let them, but we also let them go. Zen meditation is not thinking, nor not thinking, but non-thinking. Thoughts may come and go, but that is not what we are doing. We are observing everything, including our thoughts. This leads to a closer examination of the senses and insight into how the mind itself works. It is okay to keep a notebook next to where you sit in order to jot down key words about aha or eureka moments that may occur while you are in your natural, creative state of mind. Number 10, can you better spot tension in your body with body scan meditation? Yes, see above. So I thought that was a nice summary, and I'm kind of surprised to come across it again. It goes back to 2021. I don't know if you're like me, but if you have collected folders and files and folders and files over a long period of time, I'm constantly coming across something I'd completely forgotten about. Does that happen with you? And one of the biggest problems now, we have access to all this memory and storage. I can't remember what I call things. So file naming becomes a problem that Dogen didn't have. So you've got that one. So let me pass this one out. And this will be for later again. That's kind of, I put it on an Excel spreadsheet and kind of broke it out. So it's not so linear. And you can kind of see the parts, the different parts of it. The visualization, the localization, the images that are called up, and so forth. So let's stop there for a moment and see how we're doing on time. It's about halfway through the first period. Anybody have a comment or question so far? What I was reading and talking about is not what you're looking at, but if anybody wants this paper to take home and read afterwards, you're welcome to it. So in the second period, what I would like to do is go through, while you're sitting, a kind of a guided meditation, the soap cream method. We've done this before, but I will read this, and I will give you some ways that I try to visualize it. Anybody?
We're going to sit
Not yet.
in the wall. Okay.
About 15. We have a little time, about 10 minutes, 15, 13 minutes to discuss. Do you have any comment or questions so far? We've been through this before. I don't know if everybody was here. But we had not read through that before. That's kind of a general overall view. So has it occurred to you, I mean, is it obvious that what we're doing is a kind of body scan? Mentally, at least. And Buddha said some interesting things about this. He said in the Shurangama Sutra, which I highly recommend, the new BDK translation. If you'd like a copy, send me a note and I'll send you. It's a free download. It's a free copy. And it's a Chinese commentator. He's very, very good. And I really like the translation. I've even got a file which is two translations. Charles Luke's earlier translation, and this one's side by side, section by section. So you can kind of compare it. It's long, but very much worth reading. But Buddha makes some comments in there that are very startling. If you take him for granted that he's speaking truth, where he says to Ananda, the mind has the power, faculty, capacity, some word, to see into your body, to see into your own body. And so he said, you may see tapeworms. Now, tapeworms is something they knew about because in India it's a big problem. They would probably have to cut in and pull them out and things like that because common. And so they knew what a tapeworm looked like. I think I've seen what he's describing as seeing tapeworms. And I mentioned this before, but they're more like, they look to me like the nerve endings themselves kind of moving. It's kind of like in a gray television rendering, or like under an electron microscope or something where there's no color or anything, but you see all these moving shapes. And so I could understand why you would call them tapeworms, because they didn't have the electron microscopy that we have. That, nobody knew what neurons look like. What are they called? What are the nerve clusters that look like kind of like a star, like many points. What's that called? There's a name for it.
Dendrites.
A dendrite form. There's a name for the nerve ending itself.
The synapse. Synapses.
Synapses, yeah, maybe synapses would be it. Kind of look like that. And so maybe he was just saying tapeworm because that was a form, a metaphor that they would understand, or analogy they would understand. And later he says, Ananda, the mind has the faculty of penetrating external objects. Superman, X-ray vision. It sounds very mystical until you begin seeing what he's talking about in you, Zazen. I think it is pretty simple. He also said it's like a marvelous projection. So when you're sitting facing the wall in Zazen, we say focus on a point 3 to 9 feet in front of where you're sitting, not on the wall. Just fix your gaze on a point some 3 to 9 feet in front of where you're sitting. So if you do that, then the wall is just floating there in your vision like anything else. You're not looking at it, right? It's just there. And so then after a while, it begins to float. You begin to see it kind of like floating in space. And not so tangible, not and there seems to be motion occurring throughout your entire field of vision. So I think it begins to break down slowly that way. We know that everything is, brain science tells us everything is in motion. We're constructing or reconstructing it. As Buddha said, the mind imposes a false stillness on reality, keeps everything down to a dull roar. So we can drive on the expressway, so forth. But when you sit still enough, it starts moving. I think it was Khalil Gibran said, if you speak, it is silent. If you're silent, it speaks. I think you can apply that to motion. It's like by the power of opposites. The more still you sit, the more everything else moves. And so in our modern science, we just say, well, you're just seeing, the motion on the nervous system. You're just seeing, if you see light and color in the dark, then all you're seeing is the traffic of low voltage electricity, chemistry, and so forth on your nervous system. We can explain it all away. In Buddhist time, they couldn't explain it away. So he had to come up with these analogies or metaphors to try to get people to understand what may happen in your meditation. And it's perfectly normal. Don't freak out. You know, you're not going nuts. You're just seeing what you're seeing with, so to speak. Are you seeing into the senses, through the senses, instead of seeing the constructions the brain is making from the sensory data? So each of us none of us are going to have exactly the same experience, obviously. And none of us would describe it in the same way.
Since in being, at least the version, the translation I read, one of the verses says, when movement stops, there is no stopping. When no movement, there is no stopping. When such dualities cease to exist, oneness itself can exist. To this ultimate state, no law or description applies.
Right.
As far as the body scan goes, I heard a Buddhist practitioner and he's also a scientist. He talks about, as far as our senses goes, our feeling sense, this goes to the body scan, is the only sense that makes us be fully present. Because all our other senses, we can kind of skip ahead. Hearing, we don't really truly know. Our eyes are too fickle, and so. But our feeling, we have to be fully present with what's being felt. And it seems when we do the body scan, it takes the process and just slows it down. I know I catch myself this. I hear the gong ring, and you get set. You're like, okay. Be present. And, it's like this. We're trying to it's like the paradox of trying to be present, yet that's the thing creating our separation. So it seems the body scan takes us in a fast forward motion and takes that back step to just kind of slow us down a little bit and slowing down what we're trying to process in a sense.
All right. Or you could say it gives us a benchmark, a point of reference. I can focus on this part of my body. I can focus on this part of my body, momentarily. My attention I can move my attention around. I can direct my attention. Ultimately, I think it will devolve to what I call the singularity of consciousness, where you're no longer doing that. You're simply paying attention to everything simultaneously. But I think the natural monkey mind is jumping from limb to limb. The natural thing is to, what are my toes doing? What are my fingers doing? So I think just recognizing that part of the process is that you will be scanning the body. Like it or not, if your knee hurts, you're going to go there, right? And so forth. And if a mosquito bites you, you're going to go there. And eventually you'll start nodding off, you start falling asleep. And so then that becomes kind of a barrier, place to put your attention. So quickly, anybody else? We'll move to cushions facing the wall. Anybody has any other comment? We can turn the AC back on if you want, but it'll be a noise distraction.
I like it.
You like the AC?
I like having the noise too, because I can breathe noisily and be less annoying to other people.
What I like about it is when it doesn't turn on for too long. Like last morning, I was sitting here. It came on. It seemed like it was pretty muggy, but it shut off pretty quickly. And the contrast between the noise and the lack of noise was encouraging. Okay, so while you're facing the wall, let's turn the lights down, all the way down. Wait for the others to return. Remember the stretching the neck, Hucklin's gas pedal pressure point at the bottom of the spine. Those are the two key points to maintaining the upright posture. From my perspective, it's fine if you do the rocking motion for the full half hour. As I've said before, if you do not give yourself permission to move, you may never find out why we sit still. There's no reason to sit with a nagging discomfort. So rocking is one way of adjusting your posture. But then we usually encourage everyone to return to sitting as still as possible, as soon as possible. That's all part of the process, settling in. If you look at the diagram that I hand out for this session, it's posted on the bulletin board out there. You look at everything that's going on in the body constantly, digestion, breathing, blood circulation, etc., etc. You can see that's a lot of settling in to do to become still. And it's not an absolute stillness, it's a relative stillness, but sensory adaptation or habituation, the fact that almost everything that is going on in our own biology is subliminal, does not rise to the level of awareness, is actually a kind of blessing. Because if it did, you would be going bonkers. There's just so much going on there. But you can expect some of it to come back. You can expect your heartbeat. You expect to start hearing your heartbeat, seeing movement in your vision, feeling body sensations that you don't ordinarily feel. All part of the process of adaptation. I'm going to assume that we're all here now. Let me read to you the SOCREAM method. You can find this online. I thought so was spelled S-O-O, but it's only one O, so S-O. It's a Chinese word, which I don't have any idea what it means other than this explanation. So this is Hakuin visiting his teacher Hakuyu, who said to have lived in the mountain caves, kind of like a hermit or this was in Japan, not China, like a Chinese hermit monk, or senin, I think they call it S-E-N-N-I-N, senin. And I don't know if it's in here, but Hakuyu explained that these things he was teaching him for the benefit of his students, Hakuin students, were actually Zen healing methods, not Taoist. So I said, meaning Hakuin, may I hear of the use of the soul cream. By the way, another translation calls this butter, some kind of butter, like an egg size, duck egg size butter on the top of your head. Or butter or cream, I think, may have been basically synonymous in those days. May I hear of the use of the soul cream? Hakuyu said, if the student finds in his meditation that the four great elements are out of harmony and the body and mind are fatigued, he should rouse himself and make this meditation. Let him visualize, placed on the crown of his head, that celestial soul ointment, about as much as a duck's egg, pure in color and fragrance. Let him feel its exquisite essence and flavor melting and filtering down through his head, its flow permeating downwards, slowly laving the shoulders and elbows, the sides of the breast and within the chest, the lungs, liver, stomach, and internal organs, the back and spine and hip bones. All the old ailments and adhesions and pains in the 5 organs and 6 auxiliaries follow the mind downwards. There is a sound as of the trickling of water, percolating through the whole body. The flow goes gently down the legs, stopping at the soles of the feet. Then let him make this meditation, that the elixir, having permeated and filtered down through him in abundance, fills up the lower half of his body. It becomes warm, and he is saturated in it, just as a skillful physician collects herbs of rare fragrance and puts them in a pan to simmer. So the student finds that from the navel down, he is simmering in the soul elixir. When this meditation is being done, there will be psychological experiences of a sudden indescribable fragrance at the nose tip, of a gentle and exquisite sensation in the body, mind, and body become harmonized and far surpass their condition at the peak of youth. Adhesions and obstructions are cleared away. The organs are tranquilized, and insensibly the skin will begin to glow. If the practice is carried on without relapse, what illness will not be healed? What power will not be acquired? What perfection will not be attained? What way will not be fulfilled? The arrival of the result depends only on how the student performs the practices. And in the story in the Trevor Leggett accounting, he goes on to say that if a meditator practices this 7 days and 7 nights, he will be completely cured of all ailments. And if not, they practice it for 7 times, 7 days, 7 nights. He will be completely cured of all ailments. And goes on to say that those who took this up and practiced assiduously were completely cured of their ailments, which were attributed to the aggressiveness, intensity, drivenness of Rinzai practice of penetrating koans while doing zazen. Chinese description, Chinese medicine type philosophy, if you will, or model. The lungs are iron. The breath is fire. So the breathing, intently breathing, ruminating on the koan, brain very active, trying desperately to solve this illogical riddle, which cannot be solved logically. The fire rises to the brain, rises to the head, and driving the practitioner mad. So the Naikan Tanden has us directing this breath, fire breath, down through the water organs, liver, spleen, so forth, to cool it. In this case, the so cream is melting from the top, draining down through the body, cooling the fire. So again, we picture this duck-sized egg. I think of it as more like an ostrich-sized egg. Maybe I just have more need than other people have. Perched on the top of your head, on the crown of your head. The way we do the visualization is, again, you could sit with your eyes closed, where you become more sensitive to proprioception, feeling, body sensation, until you feel pressure on the top of your head. I think the pressure biologically comes from the fact that we're pulling back on our chin, pushing up on our skull, which is pushing against the scalp. So right at the crown of the head, where the bones merge together there, finally close. After the infant is, 2, 3 years old, I think that gap in the brain closes at the top, sometime in there, knits together. You can feel as if there's an egg sitting on top of your head. In one translation said, then the egg breaks. And the soap cream that fills the egg starts to seep downward through the body. Let me read his description again from this one. So ointment, pure in color and fragrance, most exquisite flavor, perfect consistency. The elixir is a perfect kind of medium. So in modern terms, I would encourage us to think of it like a body scan in a CT scanner. Would move in sort of slices starting at the top of the head, moving down through the forehead, showing sections of the brain as it goes, coming to the eyes, tips of the ears, slowly into the nose, cheekbones, and so forth. Picturing every part of the skeletal, muscular, glandular organs, systems, which nowadays, of course, we have a more complex visualization of them. Don't force it, don't push it quickly. Try to feel this fluid drifting down one layer at a time like that through the entire body till it reaches collarbone, shoulders, biceps, chest, throat, heart. Stomach. Elbows, navel, around the tendon in the hips and the center of the pelvis, seeping down into the buttocks, the upper thighs, into the knee joints, calves, Achilles tendons, into the heels, middle foot, ball of the foot, the toes, where it stops. It begins to build up as the fluid continuing to flow down but now it's flowing down from the top. The upper part of the body is becoming cooler and cooler. The lower part of the body from the toes up becoming hotter and hotter, as if we're sitting in a sea of hot water up to the belly button. And gradually the fluid is filling up past the knees, up into the thighs, up into the hip joints, into the back, lower stomach, and finally levels out at the belly button, at the navel. And there, feel the heat in our hands. It becomes hotter and hotter and hotter, and boiling and boiling. And during the time that remains, about 15 minutes, half the period, please just go through this again and again at your own rate, starting at the top of the head, all the way to the bottom of the toes, and filling back up to the belly button. As it goes, it's burning out resistance, burning out all impurities in the body. If you open your eyes, halfway open as usual, it helps to remember that you're looking through liquid. The eyes are completely full of liquid. The soap cream, as it's coming down from the top of the head, enters the eyes, where it finds the most liquid form of the body. Of course, there are pools of liquid in the brain as well. We know all of this biology now. But remember the lilting sound of trickling water. As the old ailments and adhesions and pains in the 5 organs and 6 auxiliaries follow the mind downwards. There's a sound as of the trickling of water percolating through the whole body. The flow goes gently down the legs, stopping at the soles of the feet. In abundance, the fluid fills up the lower half of the body, becomes warm, saturated. Sudden, indescribable fragrance at the nose tip. A gentle and exquisite sensation in the body. Mind and body become harmonized and far surpass their condition at the peak of youth. Adhesions and obstructions are cleared away. the organs are tranquilized, and insensibly the skin will begin to glow. Relax your legs, take a deep breath. As you're able, please rise and let's regroup and go through the Nakan Tanden. And we'll do a session on that. Bill, if you're making the tea, this would be a good time to serve it, I think. This is pretty simple, so you may memorize it tonight just by going through it a few times. So if you look at the diagram version, you can see that the first two stanzas are always the same. As I remember it in the book, he didn't even say this again the third and fourth time. He just did it the first two times. I think the indication was he kind of do this as a subvocal intonation or chant. When I tried it, I was literally lying on my back. I'll give you those instructions. Having a difficult time sleeping owing to various stress factors in my life at the time. So I tried this, and I started drifting off to sleep, losing consciousness, and then it snapped to again and start over. So we'll go through that. We'll go through it first, looking at it here, and then turn the lights down again and go back and find a place around the perimeter in which you will lie on your back instead of sitting upright. And with your head on a cushion propped up a little bit. In China, I think in Japan, I know in Japan for sure, and I think in China, they have a pillow that's kind of like a bean bag. It might be full of husk or it might be full of little tiny beans. You kind of nest to your head like these cushions that we have that have the barley husks in them. So if you're on retreat and you don't have a pillow, one of those cushions works very well as a pillow. And in Japan, I found that kind of pillow very comfortable. Anybody have trouble sleeping generally? Or?
Not when I see the pillow.
Not what?
Sleeping? No.
Most of my life, I've had severe insomnia, but not now.
Zazen is working.
Well, it's not being a drunk.
Yeah. Even that little pillow would make a nice cushion, would make a nice head pillow. So I think I told you when we went to AAG the first time, their sofus are velvet, and they're stuffed like with about an inch of kapok. I guess they're just so used to sitting cross-legged they don't need any boost. Unfortunately, Oliver and I brought our own, so we had our big Texas-style sofus. So let's go through this a few times. It has its own kind of cadence. If you look at the chart, you'll see that the first of each of the four verses just repeats the same thing. This, the energy, see the tanden, hips and legs down to the soles. Of course, that means the soles of the feet. Remember, you're lying on your back, hands on your stomach. Your head is propped up slightly on a cushion, pillow, and you hold your feet together tightly so it stretches your legs. Thank you. Hips and legs down to the soles, stretches your legs that tight. Maybe a yoga position Harrison just related to, but pull your feet together and hold them tightly like that. It makes all your legs stretch very straight. And then as you're doing this, if you do start falling asleep, your feet will fall apart and you lose consciousness, and that tends to wake you up again and you start over. So, okay. So this, the energy C, the Tanden, let's just go through it out loud. Hips and legs down to the soles, full of my original face. What nostrils would there be on that face? So the image there is the original face. And I found this when I was doing this, it made sense to inhale the first line. This, the energy C, the Tanden, hips and legs down to the soles. If you're not saying it out loud, you can time it with your breath like that. If you're saying it out loud or intoning it to yourself, which I started doing because it had a very hypnotic kind of effect, then you're taking a breath and then saying, this is the energy C, the Tanden, is exercise. Inhale, exhale, hips and legs down to the soles. Those are very even, those two lines. Then inhale, full of my original face, exhaling. Inhale, what nostrils would there be on that face, exhaling. This, the energy C, the Tanden. Inhale, hips and legs down to the soles, exhaling. Inhale, full of my true home. Each line is an exhalation. Inhale, what letter would there be from that home? This, the energy C, the Tanden. Hips and legs down to the soles. And your breath starts slowing down, so the line starts slowing. Full of my pure land of consciousness only. And the lines get longer here. Inhale, what outer form would there be in that land? And the original said outer pomp, and that seemed a little weird to me, so I just substituted the word form, which I think is similar to what the Chinese had to be getting at. This, the energy C, the Tanden, hips and legs down to the soles. Full of my Amida Buddha of this heart and body. What Dharma would that Amida be preaching? So Amida Buddha is this Buddha. On the statue here, palms are like this, an unusual mudra. Amida is the Buddha of light and healing. In the Western land, I believe they had like 4 different ones in the old model. So, any comment or question about that? The way I was doing it when I first tried this, I started out, it was kind of awkward, and it just got into a cadence and started like, just kind of drift hypnotically taking me along. I started losing consciousness. I think I told you this before, but there's a sect that focuses on breathing constantly, high attention to breathing. And they ask you, when you fell asleep last night, were you inhaling or exhaling? When you woke up this morning, were you inhaling or exhaling? Well, I can tell you, you definitely fall asleep on the exhalation. Toward the end of, after you're doing this for a while, I don't know how many times I was going through it before I started losing consciousness. But you don't fall asleep when you're inhaling. It's at the end of a long exhalation. As I said, it slows down and slows down. And even in Zazen, we see this, the exhalation slows down to a stop. And the breath just stops, and you're just there in between. And the inhalation comes again, and you start going again. So the natural process is this will slow down gradually. And the way it's structured is the line in the first one and the second one are relatively shorter, and then the third one is longer, and the fourth one is the longest. That in English, who knows in Chinese or Japanese what it was. Japanese is typically shorter in terms of number of syllables. But it seems to me that the thing is designed to sort of bring you into this semi-hypnotic cadence and repetition so that you're lulling yourself to sleep, really, kind of. And toward the end there, when you start hitting those last lines, you start losing consciousness. At first, you'll wake up and put your feet back together and you just start over, pick up from where you left off, if you remember where you left off. By now, you're drifting in and out of formless realm, dreamlike state. hypnagogic and hypnopompic. So it's kind of an interesting exercise because you're doing it at that very transition between waking and sleeping. That's where you're practicing this. And again, his students, Hakuin's students, were unable to sleep because they were so driven by their practice. Have you ever had that experience? You come to a retreat and your mind is so bright you can't sleep at night. You're just lying there and everything's brilliant.
It happens to me if I have a headache.
The headache is resistance, I think. I had to learn to take, I didn't have to, but my wife pushed me to start taking naps decades ago. So I'm trying to take a nap in the middle of the day, and I'm a workaholic like everybody else. And so I got the mask and I got the earplugs and tried everything. Dark room. It was only when I was able to stop pushing everything out and just sort of open up to cars driving by, people yelling, a bird calling, whatever it happened to be, or the noise of the refrigerator, the HVAC or whatever, just, okay, hit me with your best shot, right? Kind of opening up instead of going this way, doing the crouch and close, what is it called? The fetal curve. What is it called? Fetal.
Yield position position.
Yeah. Instead of doing that, it's just like, okay. When you were a child, you could lie down on the grass in the middle of a public park and fall asleep. If you remember that, maybe not.
I can still do that. I can still do that.
It's great. So you have to wonder if Hitler could sleep. I think they had to give him medicine to sleep. People in extreme high positions of insanity and stress have to be medicated to sleep. So anyway, meditation is better than medication. There's only one letter difference. It's all the difference in the world. So look at the visualizations. What do you understand by original face? This came from Huineng, sixth patriarch in China. Show me your original face before your father and mother were born. Very famous line. You ever read the Platform Sutra of Huineng? It's like some people say it's an autobiography, but it's suspected it is Xin Hui, his successor, disciple, wrote the biography.
Well, there is something that is always the same. So sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I think of something that I did when I was 10 years old or something. Somehow, I think that time went slower when I was that age, but otherwise, I think that I am the same in some sense. Maybe when I'm 80, or if I will be that old, I will still be the same in some sense.
My dad once said it's like a merry-go-round. You just keep going faster and faster and faster as you age. But there's a brain science theory behind that, and that's that the movement on your nervous system actually slows down from wear and tear. So your internal frequency is slowing, and that makes it seem as the external stimuli are moving faster, because it's the relationship of your internal refresh rate or frequency to the external. Like the 16 cycles per second in the cinescope, that's when you start seeing the horse running, right? So there's like a measurable frequency. And in cat TV, some cats can see the mouse and they swat at the screen, or the bird and they swat at the screen. Other cats can't see it. They just see the raster. Their frequency is not in sync with the refresh rate of the monitor. So I think it's a little like that. There's a refresh rate of reality, and everything is moving different frequencies. Light is a higher frequency than sound and so forth. But our internal frequency as we age, begins literally slowing down. It's harder for the impulses to move through the nervous system because it's aging. So it seems that everything externally is moving faster. It's as simple as when you do Kinhin, you notice not only you walking through the room, but the room is flowing through you, so to speak, through your sensorium. If you stop, the room stops. You shift to the left, the room shifts to the right, exactly the same amount. Shift to the right, the room shifts to the left, so forth. You step backwards, it goes backwards. So if you put those two together, self and other, mind and object, it comes to zero sum. There's no movement because for every movement you make, it adjusts the other way. This is the kind of personal relativity that Zen is always pointing at, I think. Like facing a precious mirrored mind, where form and reflection behold each other. When you were a child, you didn't have all these ideas, right? Just had a direct perception of reality.
Sensei, I had a few days ago. I had as I was sitting at home, I had a thought which occurs to me maybe has a relation to this, bodily perception. As I was sitting there and I was following my heartbeat, I started kind of wondering, like, what's driving all this? Like, normally you think, well, my heart's beating, but I don't control my heart. I'm just seeing it. But then something shifted and I started wondering, so something else, not me, is doing this? And that just started to wonder about that. What is my involvement? Am I just a watcher? It just didn't seem right suddenly. Or am I the doer? Or is it the same? Or
Well, I think we're taught that we're the doer. We grow up learning all these ideas. But Buddhism seems to take a challenging view of that, say, and stresses the sheer observation. Bodhidharma, in particular, in his instructions, we're just observing the breath. We're observing body, physical sensations. We're observing emotional mood swings. We're observing thoughts that come and go. Everything comes and goes like the breath. So Buddhism definitely comes down on the side of observation, sheer observation. That way it's very scientific, empirical, you could say. And
doesn't that imply kind of a separation, though?
It does.
Which that seems contrary also, though, to
conceptually
I'm here and everything else is what is out there.
Yeah, conceptually it's contrary. And what you come to realization is the word that's used for this shift in awareness. Because saying it's perception or conception, all the other words fail. So the language resorts to words like realization. The practice and realization were two things, as it appears to the ordinary person. Each could be recognized separately, as Dogen said. So realization is a word that's resorted to point at this transformation in your awareness that comes about. Where in Bodhidharma's model, the observer realizes that all of these things it's observing that we can observe in Zazen are all the things that we very closely associate with self. This is my body. These are my physical sensations. These are my thoughts. These are my concepts. These are my emotions. And this is my breath. But when you look at it dispassionately and simply observe, then you can see that you're not doing the breathing. The body's doing the breathing, as you're saying. You're not making your heart beat, right? Something, maybe you could say, well, the nervous system is triggering an electronic response that keeps the heart beating, just as it does in intestines to keep the bowels flowing, moving. There's an electronic signal that goes and makes the movement. But we're not doing that. And so it becomes clear that part of the realization is that we are observers, and the observer self-identifies with all these things that it's observing. But when examined closely, you begin to see that they're all impermanent. They're imperfect. They're insubstantial. They're ever changing. And so we want to believe in a permanent observer. That we're a permanent center of consciousness that was here before birth and will be here after death. And Buddhism kind of finesses this by saying, until we come to know consciousness also. Yes, there is permanence. There cannot be impermanence without permanence. But what is permanent is no consciousness. What is permanent is change. So the words fail to really say anything very meaningful. You're in good hands if you trust your experience and nurture that question. Keep your doubt at a keen edge, is the old saying. This is not meant to be understood. I mean, we might want to understand it, and we might speak about it as if we understand it. But it's beyond understanding. So we turn to Prajnaparamita, the perfecting of wisdom. So I think we would have to say wisdom is not really understanding. Anyone else? Try the supine technique. Find a comfortable place, a comfortable cushion for your head, not too high, not too low. Stretch out and bring the lights down. And I'll walk you through this. You can take those home so you can use those. My leading, you probably don't need to refer to them. It's going to be too dark. But remember, I will be breathing at my rate, and you breathe at a different rate. So what you do tonight at home will be the genuine exercise, practice of this exercise. So Hakuin was from 1686 to 1769. So he lived about 90 years, it looks like. And had to have died just before the American Revolutions, 1776. Pull your feet together as hard as you can so that the inner edges of both feet touch. It's a little uncomfortable on your thighs and calves. But like a yoga stretch, like you're doing one of the yoga postures, or leg lift, like under leg lift, you want it to be pretty rigorous, pretty rigid. And put your hands on your stomach, one on each side, so you're very comfortable. And the whole point here from the Chinese medicine breath cycle, which is covered more in the extended story in the Trevor Leggett books, is to direct the breathing instead of having it come up to the head, from the lungs up to the head, to push the breathing down through the water organs, down through the hips and legs, down through the soles, as if it's going out the bottom of your feet. When we do Kinhin, we make the same point. As you're inhaling, Foot falls forward as you're exhaling, pressing into the floor as if you're breathing through your feet, which was said to be a teaching of the Buddha. So this is another variation on that, but you're directing the exhalation of the breath down through the water organs of the stomach, the intestines, the liver, kidney, spleen, and so forth, down through the bottom, the water organs. The fire of the breath then gets cooled by that. But then you visualize it going all the way down through your body, out the soles of the feet. And then the latter part of the story, Hakuyu tells Hakuin that when the extremities, the fingers and toes, begin to feel pins and needles, that prickly sensation in the fingertips and in the toes, it's beginning to work. And he explained it to say that the key life force of the body is now tapping or pulling in through the breathing, pulling in the key of the universe. And that is healing. That's the healing process. So if your fingers and your toes begin to tingle with that pins and needles feeling, tingling feeling, that's when it's beginning to take stronger effect. So you want to sit as still as possible, just as if there were a form of zazen, not fidgeting around. Just find the most comfortable position. If you need to adjust to be more comfortable, please do so. If you fall asleep and start snoring, we'll pour water on you. So here we go. Follow my cadence for now, but again, later you'll be following your own breath. With each of these, I would say inhale, and then silently intone or sub-vocalize or intone out loud if you like each line. This, the energy sea, the Tanden. Hips and legs down to the soles. Full of my original face. What nostrils would there be on that face? This, the energy sea, the Tanden. Hips and legs down to the soles. Full of my true home. What letter would there be from that home? This, the energy sea, the Tanden. Hips and legs down to the soles. Full of my pure land of consciousness only. What outer form would there be in that land? This, the energy sea, the Tanden. Hips and legs down to the soles. Full of my Amida Buddha, of this heart and body. What Dharma would that Amida be preaching? This, the energy sea, the Tanden. Hips and legs down to the soles. Full of my original face. What nostrils would there be on that face? This, the energy sea, the Tanden. Hips and legs down to the soles. Full of my true home. What letter would there be from that home? This, the energy sea, the Tanden. Hips and legs down to the soles. Full of my pure land of consciousness only. What outer form would there be in that land? This, the energy sea, the Tanden. Hips and legs down to the soles. Full of my Amida Buddha, of this heart and body. What Dharma would that Amida be preaching? This, the energy sea, the Tanden. Hips and legs down to the soles. full of my original face. What nostrils would there be on that face? This, the energy sea, the time then, hips and legs down to the soul, full of my true home. What letter would there be from that home? This, the energy sea, the time then, hips and legs down to the soles, full of my pure land of consciousness only. What outer form would there be in that land? This the energy sea, the time then, hips and legs down to the soles, full of my Amida Buddha of this heart and body. What Dharma would that Amida be preaching? This the energy sea, the time then, hips and legs down to the soles, full of my original face. What nostrils would there be on that face? This the energy sea, the time then, hips and legs down to the soles, full of my pure land of consciousness only. What outer form would there be in that land? This the energy sea, the time then, hips and legs down to the soles, full of my Amida Buddha of this heart and body. What Dharma would that Amida be preaching? This the energy sea, the time then, hips and legs down to the soles, full of my original face. What nostrils would there be on that face? This the energy sea, time then, hips and legs down to the soles, full of my pure land of consciousness only. What outer form would there be in that land? This the energy sea, the time then, hips and legs down to the soul, full of my Amida Buddha of this heart and body. What Dharma would that Amida be preaching? Wake up, little Susie, wake up. That dates me, doesn't it? Okay, let's rejoin for a few final comments and a discussion. Have you ever seen Rashomon? I think let's just do the center lights, if you will. There's a little less glaring. Yeah. Rashomon, one of the famous Kurosawa films, I believe. In the beginning scene, they're all gathering under on those huge gates in Japan to get out of the rain. It's just an absolute downpour. Coming.
It sounds like Atlanta.
And it's a very compelling, hypnotic kind of beginning of a film. It tells the story of a rape in the woods where all the different testimony at the trial, at the end of the movie, everybody testifies to having seen something entirely different. And the main point of the movie was that we all have our own reality. It's not that one was in error and the other was not in error. Just from their perspective, they saw what they thought they saw. And they showed it in film. They showed the rape and killing incident 4 times because they had 4 witnesses. They showed it 4 times in the movie. They showed it differently. When they were testifying, they go back and show the same scene again. But it was entirely different. So, wonderful use of cinematic technique. But remember, in those days, they didn't have acid rain. They were exposed to the elements more than we are. A monastery, even now, they've redone them, but even now they're pretty huge and drafty by comparison to this environment, almost hyperbaric environment, or whatever you call it, when it's all sealed off. So I grew up on a farm, and we were exposed to the elements a lot. And I remember the rain, when it would rain. I felt very good. It made something about it was soothing, hypnotic, cooling in the summer, right? But it also, I didn't learn until much later, that what happens is it frees up a bunch of nascent oxygen, like single cell or single atom oxygen, which is apparently very good for us to breathe. I don't know if any of you know more about that than I do. But for instance, if I'm exercising, some of your joggers, runners and walkers, after the rain, the air is much better for you because it has nascent oxygen, free radicals of oxygen in it. So you have to imagine that in Dogen's day and Hakuin's day, when they were sleeping like this, they weren't sleeping in an air-conditioned room. They were sleeping in whatever exposure to the weather they had, a thatched hut, right? That kind of thing. And the monasteries were extremely, what would you call it? Drafty, right? So even the effect of incense would have been much different than it is on us in an enclosed environment. So this kind of exercise, the Nakan Tanden, if you go camping and you're out in the woods, might be closer to what they were experiencing back in the day than what we experience.
Yeah, I saw YouTube about Yellowstone Park and the wolf. And I'm sure you probably, but I'm brought up in Sweden, so I sometimes miss things that all the Americans have seen. And the thing was that they killed off all the wolves in the Yellowstone Park.
Yep.
And then the elks, they could go to the river and then they could just graze off all the trees there. And then when they grazed off the trees there, the sand would not hold together by the river, and basically Yellowstone Park fell apart. And then they actually implanted wolves, and then magically the Yellowstone Park resurrected, and they tried to calculate how many $1 million the wolves were worth. But the thing that got me thinking was that the elks, they didn't have any predators, so they would just go to the best spot with water and food, and then they would just stand there and just eat and eat. Mm-hmm. And I think that we're doing the same thing. We don't have a predator, and we don't have
other
we don't
human
have
beings.
the
Other
rain
human beings.
and the bad.
The only predator is other human beings.
Yes, other human beings, right?
Yeah.
But and we do have the cell phone. It will ring all the time. So, we have less time, perhaps.
We don't have a food chain predator,
right?
As such, unless they're cannibals about.
But it's man-made. So our world is man-made. It's not as much cold, heat, or animals lurking behind a tree. Or
I would say man altered or man tweaked. We didn't make it, but we screwed it up.
Right. And also, I think before they would believe in ghosts, and I mean we can still believe in a ghost, but maybe it was easier when there was no light, and you had to go out and do something outside and come back. Today you have like the flashlights, and you get a flashlight on your cell phone.
Yeah. It's very hard for us to actually register that contextual difference because we were born in basically. Actually, when I was born in the 40s, my grandparents lived on they basically hunted. They hunted for food, squirrels, deer. They buy a slab of bacon. They grew most of their own vegetables. They were living much closer, just 2 generations back, much closer to where Dogen would be in his time, well water, right? So it's not been very long. It's been like 2 generations that this is kind of, some people think insanity has happened, but it's cultural evolution. It's extremely rapid. Did you have something here?
Yeah, I was going to say about ghosts. Apparently, the theory is, and there's stories about old monks that did this. If certain monks, if there was spirits or ghosts in the like house they were in, they would chant the Heart Sutra, and they said that the ghost would leave.
Yeah, I was actually asked by one of our members who became a resident. We finally had to ask him to leave. It was just too out there. He was a brilliant modern composer of modern classical music. And he had your room, and the walls were covered with his.
You're not talking about me, right?
The walls were covered with his notation. It was beautiful just to look at. I've got some of his albums, very, very extreme stuff. But he was so far out there. Before he moved here, he asked me to come to his apartment and chase the demons out, which I did. I went and incensed the apartment to get rid of the demons. And so, yeah, there were a lot of.
Did it work? Did it work?
Well, he moved here and became a demon for us. So.
I was gonna say, I promise there's a ghost in here. I'll walk out sometimes and stuff is just like flailed out.
Yeah. Anything is possible, as in some things are just less likely.
I think in some sense, like you do have other people around. It's man-made. Even if it's man-made, I think, for example, I like the Swedish healthcare system. When you're sick, you don't need to think about the bills and stuff. But here in America, when you're sick, then they come with this paper in front of you. Sign here. and then you get for another 5 months, perhaps you get more bills. But yeah, so then it is some type of you have to watch out, and then. For example, with the health insurance, I know Americans who don't go to the doctor because they're scared of the bill.
Yeah.
And then they get sick, and maybe they get cancer or something instead. So there is still, I think, like even if you have the doctors and they're very advanced and so forth, perhaps the system will still kind of. There's always. And then we die. We still die, right? When we're 80 years old. So, but it's very different, I think.
Back in the day, these were considered healing processes, healing techniques, etc. Not magical. I don't think they are in the realm of superstition. It was more the medicine of the time, or the science of the times, was saying that when you're ill, something is out of balance. Something can be brought back into balance. And it's as simple as drinking too much alcohol. You're going to get sick eventually. So you have to come back into balance with it. So I think this is kind of a reliance on the body itself to detect the symptoms, for your mind. If you're freed from too much anxiety, too many preconceptions, and so forth, you can, in a sense, diagnose your own illness. You can do what you need to do to be healthy. But, nothing is guaranteed. And even in Dogen's time, the historians say there was a plague in Japan that they estimate killed off 2/3 of the entire population of Japan. So by our standards, that would be huge. That would be 200 million people die in America from a virus. So they weren't free of the kind of modern maladies that we have, but we have this man-made imbalance in the system that we've created for good reasons, but it's coming back to bite us. And so things are more out of balance than ever. And I think our last resort is still meditation.
Yes.
Anything? Anybody fall asleep?
Well, I felt the tingling in the toes. So I did the breathing in and the breathing out with your phrases. And then I think that it was one part where I started to think about something else. And I wasn't focusing on the hip, legs, and the toes. And the tingling disappeared. And I was like, wait a minute. So it's basically your attention. Something.
What do you like about this or not like about this? What we did tonight, this exercise, especially in Nikon Tanda, or both of them?
It's uncomfortable. I don't actually like keeping the feet together. Isn't like the actual physicality of keeping the muscles together isn't the problem.
It's hard for me. I'm naturally slew-footed. My feet.
Well, it's for me. It's the uncomfortable is the knuckles of the toes touching.
Yeah.
It's like there's certain like and lining it up is imbalanced. So it's for me. It was just like the literal bones of the toes touching.
Yeah. It's weird. That part of it is kind of weird, but that's in the instructions. So
for me, it was easier than last time, even though it was a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it was pretty painful last time. It was just barely painful this time.
In the back, where was the pain?
The legs from holding the feet together.
Mm-hmm. I found that the first time I did it too. It was like, why would you do this?
Yeah.
Keeping you awake.
Oh yeah, there's no way I could have slept, fallen asleep with that kind of pain.
But eventually I started conking out. The last one where finally, fell asleep, I just woke up the next morning. It was like I didn't dream, it didn't, nothing. Soon.
Part of that, what we did, that the upper body is relaxed. It's like a
Maybe
contrast.
so, maybe because we're putting the effort in the lower body. So it allows all of this, the breathing apparatus, to relax better.
Right.
And that was the point. Hakuin told his students, he said, you need to get a good night's sleep. Your practice, you need to put down your practice, stop working on your koans, and I'm going to show you this technique, how to get good night's sleep.
That's why I like Banke. That's why I like Banke, because he was like,
Yeah.
when I'm tired, I sleep. When I'm hungry, I eat. When I'm thirsty, I drink.
He was the unborn mind guy. I like him. He said, you're listening to me here, you hear what I'm saying, you understood what I'm saying. A while ago, a dog barked. Told this story before, right? And before that, a bird called. And you didn't mistake the dog barking for the bird calling. And you didn't stop listening to what I'm saying. He said, this is my proof of the unborn mind. It is always in the background organizing everything for you, and it is marvelously illuminating. So the great ones in history kind of reduced it down to one thing. His was the unborn mind. He said it's the only thing you inherited from your parents. He was about it. He was after Hakuin, I think.
It's in the 1700s.
Was he right the same period? But I don't think he was Soto, I'm not sure. Anything? Dale? Did you find the experience? Okay.
I did. I think I'm still. I'll go ahead and ask the same question to you that I've asked recently, which is just I'm still wondering and still trying to answer the question I have about what is meditation, right? Because we use the language, and there becomes a part of this for me that feels like it's firmly indescribable language. It's readily accessible, and then there's parts of it that are starting to move beyond that,
Yeah.
and that makes me ask the question, what is meditation? So, like, if I'm trying to discern or organize the idea of meditation that I have to be consistent with your idea, presumably that you're also teaching, how would you organize the scanning process that we were discussing before? Is that a type to you? Is that a type of meditation or a technique or a method underneath the umbrella of meditation? Is that different than this process of lying down and going through, more of a formulaic, almost laid out like a sutra almost? And how does in the abstract world of trying to help somebody who's still very new to all of this understand how you think of the word meditation? How does that? I mean, what might you be able to add onto that, and how does that relate to what we've been doing?
So how would you define meditation in your own words? You paraphrase it.
That's so good question. And in the context that I would define it would be how I've seen it around me. And one of the examples that I gave was I was in a bookstore and I saw a book that was titled Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, for instance.
Yeah.
And that to me is, seemed like a very different connotation than some of what it is that we have been working with here in this format. So I think there's the commonality of the term focus has been used. The term attention has been
And
used.
forms of music are called meditations.
So then that could be true also. I had not considered that as much. But when I'm like it does get hard sort of as when you meander into this space because you go to the source where all the words are in the bookstore and you turn around and here's meditation used this way and then you pull this one off the shelf and read some of it and it's
and people sometimes
I do think there's more commonality maybe in the ways I've been reading out of your Zen school and it's also helpful to have that rooted in more in the Soto practice and what have you. But I for me part of this has been about trying to maybe just at a very basic level wrap my head around what meditation is and then how to orient that into sitting and what the just basic nuts and bolts on that.
That's a good question, and it's one we take for granted. We say Zen meditation, yogic meditation, all these different things are meditation, and music can be meditation, writing can be a meditation. So it's important in Zen. In one of the books, I can get into the conventional dictionary definition of meditation. And it could be a deep thinking. It can be concentration on one subject. It can be, some conventional definitions that don't really fit Zen and or Zazen. So I make the point that Zazen is not meditation in the conventional sense. Meditation typically means a subject meditating upon an object. So there's a subject-object separation. So I'm meditating upon a candle flame, or I'm meditating upon an image of a Buddha. I'm meditating upon a koan. I'm meditating, so forth. People like to play music when they meditate because they listen to the music and they think of that as meditation. But in Zen, or Zazen, Zazen becomes objectless meditation. One meaning of shikantaza is just precisely sitting. And as I said earlier from Tozan, form and reflection behold each other. So there comes about a singularity in which there is no longer subject and object. As Dogen said, mind and object merge in realization and go beyond enlightenment. So it's really pointing at the reality that we're already all sitting in. It's already here. But we have a lot of concepts and ideas about reality, right? One of them is called meditation. So we say, okay, when I'm sitting here like this, I'm doing meditation. When I'm not sitting here like this, I'm not doing meditation. That division doesn't exist in Zen.
So is it fair to paraphrase that definition in this Zen context of meditation as embracing objectlessness?
You could say, yeah.
Maybe that's something along those lines.
Or you could say, I think of it as more exploratory in a process of discovery. So all the words that imply something we do, like we embrace it, we achieve it, we this and that. It's more like we observe reality, whatever that means to you. And our ordinary conception of reality, our ordinary apprehension of it, by sitting still enough, long enough, like this thing we did tonight, both these things tonight, their effectiveness will be based on repetition. You can never actually repeat the same thing twice. We all understand that. But by going through this again and again and again and again, by going through Zazen again and again and again, all the ideas you have about it, all the misconceptions you have about it just start falling away. And it's just left with what it is. And so this means that we approach Zen differently than we approach everything else that we learn. Dogen's line was something like to carry yourself forward and experience the myriad things is delusion. That's the way we learn everything. That's what we usually do. That the myriad things come forth and experience themselves is awakening. So he has all kinds of statements like this. There's like a flip. It's like a 180-degree flip. It wakes up. Buddha said, I and all beings, the entire universe, are enlightened together. So your enlightenment means everything else is enlightened. That doesn't make sense because we think of enlightenment as something that only sentient beings can have. But this proposition says actually everything in your world is not outside your mind. So if you wake up, your whole world wakes up. Some of the effusive descriptions in the literature like that. They sound kind of woo-woo and, mystical and superstitious. And all these words we're using tonight were translated from Japanese, Chinese, probably before that, Sanskrit before that. So we're not even sure in that culture what these actually meant. So we go through these exercises, understanding that through repetition, it will be revealed to us what this is pointing at. But we go in not knowing what we're doing. We go in not knowing what enlightenment, awakening can be. We have an idea about it. We've heard about it. And that's open mind, the don't know mind, trusting mind, that we just put our whole self into this practice, hoping that these people were not delusional who put these exercises together for us, the ancestors, and that they will definitely lead us to some sort of insight. The definition, so you have to set aside the words, like you can say, I'm not doing meditation. I don't know what this is. We call it meditation. It doesn't really matter. I want to see what's at the bottom of this.
Just to be sure, I heard correctly. At some point, you did say the zazen is not necessarily meditation.
Who said that?
Did you? I think.
Yeah, zazen is not technically meditation, because meditation is technically, conventionally, a subject meditating upon an object.
Right.
There's one line from the Shin Sing Ming that gets into this, says, when no discriminating thoughts arise, the old mind disappears, or the old mind, something, you might remember the line.
Ceases to exist.
Ceases to exist. When thought objects vanish, the thinking subject vanishes. When thought objects vanish, the thinking subject vanishes. Things are objects because there is a subject mind. The mind is a subject because there are objects. So if as Dogen says, mind and object merge in meditation, shikantaza, go beyond enlightenment, means that there is no more subject-object. Subject is dependent on the object is dependent on the subject. So the reality that it's pointing at is before separation into subject and object. When you were first born, you didn't know from nothing. It took you a long time to individuate and separate your object or your subject out from the objective world that you found yourself inhabiting. That's a learned bifurcation. Buddhism's premise is it's kind of the fall from grace, separating into self and other. Then I have to defend myself against other, right? So when Dogen says study the way is to study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be enlightened by all things. There's different translations. To be enlightened by all things is to remove the barrier between self and other, go on in traceless enlightenment forever. Most people think of that as remove the barrier between self and others on a social level. Kumbaya, can't we all just get along? You're the same as me, I'm the same as you. That's not what he meant. He meant even if you're Bodhidharma sitting in a cave alone, nobody around for miles, there's still self and other. So the fundamental relationship that we have to resolve is of self to other. And it bifurcated after we were born. It separated out. In the beginning, Freud's oceanic awareness in the crib, everything is just one big gooball. We can't differentiate anything. Gradually, we learn to separate ourselves from the crib, from the environment, from mom, and so forth. And then we become aware of ourselves as a separate being. And that's one side of the truth. But the other side of the truth is that it's all interconnected. There is no such separation, actually. It is real. I mean, you're me, you and you, I'm me. You know, we're not the same. We're separate, but we're not separate from the source from which we came. It's another catch-22, conceptual catch-22. So when we do meditation, we're doing nothing but returning to the original self. It's the meaning of refuge. Refuge means refugo, refugare means to return to. We're not running away from or hiding from, taking refuge. We're taking refuge, we're returning to the original Buddha nature, returning to the original teaching of the truth, the Dharma, returning to the original community, the Sangha, of all human beings, and all sentient beings, really, and even insentient beings, returning to our original self, which hadn't gone anywhere.
So I think there's what meditation is for me anyway. But I also think it's important to there are different types of meditation or different goals for meditation. So some people they only meditate to kind of get rid of stress. And then that's fine for them so maybe they write a book, oh, this is how you get rid of stress, just do this meditation. But I think that if you go to the Zen, it's a different goal. It's like the goal is higher than to just get rid of stress. Or maybe it's not even related. Maybe you actually get a little bit stressed.
You can look up different principles. Gedo Zen, Bampo Zen. Some Zen is about being healthy. Some Zen is about being prosperous. Some people practice Nama Myoho Renge Kyo.
Versions of Zen.
Prosperity religions.
Okay.
And some people sit in meditation as a form of prayer. So there's a lot of attitudes about it. But Zen goes straight to the singularity where that's all on the social level. And so we do want to differentiate Zen meditation from the others in our presentation of it. If you're interested in propagating Zen, which I am, then you really have to treat it as a meditation in order to differentiate it from the others. But if you say it's not meditation, why would anybody come and do it? So from our perspective,
Zen becomes what is it, and everybody's got to figure out what it is.
For us, it's more a method than anything else. You could say a method to do what? A method to get what? A method to get where?
It's actually an interesting business problem, kind of.
It is.
Sort of.
When we first started here in '77, there was really no other meditation in town.
Along the same lines, there's a similar question that was asked on a call for the book that was finished a few weeks ago. But in one of the last sessions of that book, the question went around of who identifies as a Buddhist, and
I don't.
It's and so it was interesting to see how people answered that question.
Yeah.
And at some point, and you don't always, thought happens quickly, but you don't always recognize everything that's happening at once until later sometimes. But I remember thinking the next day that in order for anybody on this call to recognize it as a Buddhist, somebody on this call has to define what a Buddhist is and recognize it as the opposite. So it kind of and then you get the challenge back all over again of the language around what becomes less concrete and describable, and the intention of why is that person asking you what your religious affiliation is, and is it friendly, is social, amicable, or is there a precondition attached to it? And the complexities of these, in math terms, it would be like first order derivatives of calculus and second order derivatives and levels of complexity, almost like the infinite images in the mirror and the number of ways that you can come around and experience.
It's helpful to put it in context. And one of the models, as a designer, I develop visual models for these things. One of them is nesting sphere is personal, it's in the center, social, next sphere out, next rest, natural world, and the universal. Right. So most of our confusion comes on the boundaries. If you say something like you were just saying about, are you a Buddhist or are you not a Buddhist? That's a social level question. Buddha was not a Buddhist. What he developed, what he did, and what became what we now call Buddhism, right? And so compared to other teachers, I would be seen as a Zen Buddhist teacher. I'm teaching the way of Zen Buddhism. I'm not teaching the way of Buddhism. But personally, I don't self-define as a Buddhist. That doesn't make any sense. Buddha did not self-define as a Buddhist. Buddha simply means the fully awakened one. He woke up. He was fully awake, like a zombie movie. He was the only one in the room awake. Everybody else is walking around sleepwalking, thinking they're awake, but he could see that they weren't. But that'd be a horrible thing. But he was not a Buddhist, didn't identify as a Buddhist. That's only on the social level.
As soon as you attach an idea to it or a word to it, it becomes something that either has to be defended or denied, and then if you're not in the majority, you're in the minority. What, and really even kicking back to like your overarching, what sounds like mission as somebody who instructs and teaches and aspires to propagate this perspective and share the point of view. It's somewhat contingent on the language around it, and it's contingent upon the framework of the language that we have at our disposal. And by the time somebody asks that question, you sort of get to frame what a Buddhist is, but you don't necessarily, but you do, but you don't. Right. It becomes very complicated. But
one way it's said, like in the precepts, one way it's
really
said,
interesting.
I take up the way of Buddhism, or I take up the way of not killing, or take up the way of. So it doesn't say that I'm self-identifying with it. That's common parlance. Somebody asks you what you are, and you answer is usually, I'm a Christian, or there's a lot of things we could say we aren't, but in the social level, in our culture at least, if somebody asks you what you are, they typically mean, what religion do you identify with, right? So you say, I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew. Whereas Judaism is a little different. You're born into the family and so forth. Yeah. I'm not speaking for you. I live next door to the rabbi. So, yeah. But you can see that that's all in the social sphere, right?
Yeah.
When you're sitting in Zazen, you're in the personal sphere. And to sit there and call yourself a Buddhist be absurd.
One more thing about the meditation is that so if one decides that one is not just interested in stress reduction, one is interested in finding something higher, then there is other options. So you can go to Christian church, and a little bit. My perception, there is meditation and so forth in the Christian church, but my perception is that it doesn't have a very good track record that they get to heaven or something while they're alive. through meditation, but in if you go to Zen, like there's all these stories about monks, and they do this practice to kind of get to a different view of reality.
Yeah.
And in my view, it's a big difference that so maybe meditation is extremely it's not very helpful and so forth, but at least it's something. And if one compares to you're not supposed to compare, right? But if you do it against Christianity, they don't even have meditation, which is this horrible practice that you may not get anywhere, no matter how much.
Some have like centering prayer,
right?
Jesuits
in Christianity.
Yeah.
Right.
So
in the Judaism, there's the Kabbalah, for example. But I think it seems to me that the Zen Buddhists have a good track record, but I'm not really sure.
Well, the emphasis
I haven't
is, and Soto especially, is
counted.
But, at one point, the singularity of reality, you would have to say the rest is semantics, right? So if a centering prayer or Christian thinks sitting still enough, enter into quiet stillness, enter into the presence of God, right? So you would have to say, well, what does God mean? You say God means everything, reality, right? Then it's semantical. It's just semantics. But if you're sitting conceiving of a God and you're trying to achieve that, that's just like trying to become a Buddha. As Dogen said, give up even the idea of becoming a Buddha because it's an idea, right? Right. So if you're sitting there with an idea of God and you're trying to achieve that, that's the same delusion. But if you're entering into the presence of God, and God is this word that is a head upon a head from a Zen perspective, it's an extra word, it's an unnecessary word. Because if God is everything, there's no need for the word God. This is similar to Vairochana Buddha. Vairochana Buddha is the Buddha that is the entire universe. So a fundamental belief, you could say, is that if a person, no matter what horse they ride in on, Christian or Islam or whatever, if they have this kind of experience, it is, in that sense, the same. And they may see that they're not really a Muslim. They're not really a Christian. Those are just labels. Christ was not a Christian. I doubt that Muhammad was Muslim, right? Couldn't have been. Didn't exist.
But he was the first one.
No, it was his followers that were the first.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, anything else? We run over. My cup runneth over. Thank you for your comments, Dale. Everybody, Kasho.